Welcome into this edition of Dolphins Today. Fired up to be with you, an off-season Dolphins Today edition. I am your host, Jake Riepma, and it's time to talk about the most important position in sports, the most important position in the National Football League, the quarterback position, the signal caller, and who's going to be under center in 2024 for the Miami Dolphins. Now, as we start to discuss Tua replacements, I've got some background information that I want Tua supporters, Tua haters, and everyone in between to just chew on for a little bit. Just kind of ponder over some of this information as we work through it and before we get into Tua's replacements. From 2009 to 2019, the year before the Dolphins drafted Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins had one winning season. Now, since drafting Tua in 2020, they've had 4 straight winning seasons. Again, I'm not telling you how to feel. We're just presenting information. Now, as for Chris Grier regarding Tua Tagovailoa's future, we've been showing you this quote for a couple of days now, but it's important to get a feel on where the front office is as it stands with the future of Tua Tagovailoa. Chris Grier said, "We've stayed in touch with his agent, has good conversations throughout the year. The goal is to have him here long term." Now, of course, he didn't shed any light on the specifics of what having Tua here long-term looks like, but he did say we're very excited about our core nucleus of players, and one would certainly infer that core nucleus of players includes Tua Tagovailoa. But again, I'm speculating there, so let's just, again, take the information for what it is at this point. Now, what did Tua himself have to say? This was after the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs and was asked about his future in the pending contract situation and whether or not he feels any pressure with his future. He said, "I don't feel any pressure at all. I have full trust in myself, and I have full trust in what I'm capable of doing for our organization." So the headspace for Tua Tagovailoa, and it always seems like he's this way. Again, if you watch Hard Knocks, you see how mild-mannered he is. He's fun. He's joking around. But I would say he's in a good spot right now as far as what's going on between the ears for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, let's get our creative cap on and start to put together what Tua replacements might look like. And in the 2024 offseason, whether or not this comes to fruition or not, there are certainly some talking points to get into on what other options at the quarterback position might look like for the Miami Dolphins. We begin with Kirk Cousins. That's right, Kirk Cousins, quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, that is in fact a free agent and also looking for potentially a new home or a new deal. But nobody forgets the fact that he suffered a torn Achilles in Week 8 against the Packers. And there is a little bit of a connection with Mike McDaniel. So Kirk Cousins originally drafted by Washington, which is where Mike McDaniel was for the first 2 years of Kirk Cousins' career. Now, go back in time with me. Remember, Kirk Cousins was not drafted, and there weren't a lot of expectations for Kirk Cousins because in that same year, Washington drafted Robert Griffin III in the first round, expecting him to be the franchise quarterback. We all know how that has worked out, and Kirk Cousins has now become a premier quarterback in the NFL. And when you look at his career stats, it's no secret why. Over 270 touchdowns compared to 110 interceptions, nearly a 67% completion percentage for 150 games, very impressive, and almost 40,000 yards. Now, interesting little tidbit here from an anonymous NFL executive to The Athletic that was asked about potential Tua replacements, and referring to Miami's perspective, he said, "I would be exploring, okay, Tua, we can win games with, probably not winning a championship with. Kirk Cousins, we can win games with, probably not winning a championship with. But our resources are better spent on Cousins plus draft picks than they are on just Tua." So this NFL executive, again, this is from an anonymous NFL exec that was in The Athletic, essentially saying that perhaps the Dolphins could shift course a little bit, and maybe it wouldn't yield more success or less success. It would just be kind of a different approach. And I happen to disagree with him because I don't think Kirk Cousins is getting you anything that Tua Tagovailoa isn't. The only argument that maybe could be made is a more team-friendly deal in free agency compared to Tua Tagovailoa. But let me know what you think. Should Miami explore replacing Tua with Kirk Cousins? Again, Cousins set to be a free agent in 2024. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you're for the idea of Kirk Cousins coming to Miami, type Y for yes. If not, type N for no. I'm certainly not in favor of this potential replacement of Tua Tagovailoa. Now, coming up, we've got more potential replacements to get into at the quarterback position for the Miami Dolphins. But first, it's time to give a salute of today's proud presenting sponsor, Factor, America's #1 meal delivery service. And in 2024, there is no better choice to make than Factor as America's #1 meal delivery service, because let me tell you, they're going to help you save time because their fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals are delivered straight to your door. Forget the grocery shopping. Say goodbye to cleaning up the dishes and the mess. You don't even have to meal prep. Everything's all delivered right for you, and they are delicious, filling meals. Right on the screen there, the roasted red pepper filet, one of my all-time favorites. I always give you this pro tip, the Chipotle pork chops to die for. And oh yeah, don't forget about the 35 weekly options to choose from. Plus, you've got options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and so much more. And don't forget about 55 weekly add-ons, so you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart those resolutions in the new year. What an idea. How about this? You got to go to factormeals.com/FinsChat50 to get that 50% off code. Use code FinsChat50 for 50% off. It's at factormeals.com/FinsChat50 and use code FinsChat50 to get 50% off. And we love you and we care about you, so we'll put that link right in the comments of today's video. And it's that easy. factormeals.com/FinsChat50. Now, the second option for a potential Tua replacement, this would be a blockbuster idea. Trading for Dak Prescott. We all know what happened in Dallas at Jerry's World in the opening round of the NFL playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys were embarrassed by the Green Bay Packers. Not the best performance for Dak in that offense. And you know how reactionary Jerry Jones can be. With that said, the Dallas Cowboys could find it friendly to replace Dak Prescott because they could save $34 million by trading Prescott before his roster bonus is set to take place on March 17th. So if you want to circle March 17th on your calendar, if the Cowboys are going to part ways with Dak Prescott and maybe make a trade, it would likely be before March 17th. And when you look at his stats from this past season, what a year he had, and maybe he even will go on to be the NFL MVP. I think Lamar Jackson is going to earn that award, but Dak would certainly be in the conversation of MVP caliber players in the regular season. It just has not correlated to postseason play, but 36 touchdowns. He led the NFC in that category, nearly a 70% completion percentage, over 4,500 yards. The list goes on, and he was durable. He played in all 17 games. When you look at his statistical production compared to Tua Tagovailoa's, there's a lot of areas in which they are comparable, but again, Dak had a little bit more of a playmaking component to his total body of work with those 36 touchdowns compared to just 29 for Tua. Tua did have more yards per se because Tua led the NFL in passing yards. QB rating, Dak scored a little bit higher there, but relatively comparable. And when you look at the potential for a blockbuster trade, I don't think it would be as simple as Dak to Miami, Tua to Dallas. I think Miami would have to sweeten the deal a little bit, and I don't know exactly what that would look like. But Dak's also in the fourth year, just completed the fourth year of his 4-year deal. So he's due a big payday as well. And with the Miami Dolphins being roughly $40 million in cap deficit. I don't think they're in a position to make a huge deal for Dak Prescott. Like I said, he's entering his final year of a 4-year extension with a lot of guaranteed money, so obviously he'll be wanting that similar type of deal since he's proven himself as a premier quarterback in the NFL, just hasn't had the postseason success. That's why Dallas might be looking to part ways with Dak Prescott. And it is believed that he is also looking for the no-tag clause that Lamar Jackson has in his contract. So a lot of guaranteed money, a no-tag clause, not certainly a deal or team-friendly deal, which is a lot of reasons why I have reservations about this one. But let me hear from you. How badly do you want the Dolphins to entertain the idea of trading for Dak Prescott? Scale it for me in the comments 1 through 10. If you're like, hey, we need Dak Prescott in Miami ASAP, go ahead and put a 10 down there. If you're like, I don't want to touch Dak with a 10-foot pole, go ahead and put a 1 in the comments. Or maybe you're lukewarm on the idea. Let me know either way. Now, with that said, how about the notion of not necessarily replacing Tua, but planning for life after Tua, a post-Tua succession plan, if you will, by drafting a quarterback and building him up internally through your system? With the Dolphins picking at number 21 in the first round, there are some intriguing options at that spot in the draft. You know, not necessarily late first round, not necessarily early, but more later than early. Either way, let's look at some potential first round quarterbacks that maybe the Dolphins take the draft and stash approach, starting with Bo Nix. We know about Bo Nix as a guy that started his career at Auburn, burst onto the scene, then kind of fizzled out at Auburn, but then really found success at Oregon under Dan Lanning. What a year he had for the Oregon Ducks. They only had 2 losses on the season, both to the Pac-12 champion and eventual national runner-up Washington Huskies. And you look at the stats there, nearly set a record for completion percentage in the college football ranks. So one of the more accurate passers you will see as far as prospects are concerned. 45 touchdowns compared to just 3 interceptions. Just insane numbers. Also has the family pedigree as well, with his father being a quarterback as well. So with that said, Bo Nix, and a lot of mock drafts have him going between 20 and 25, so it certainly wouldn't be a reach. Maybe later around in the teens, but you get the idea. There is a legitimate conversation that Bo Nix would be available at the Dolphins picking at the 21st overall pick. Now, speaking of national champions, J.J. McCarthy out of the University of Michigan has declared for the draft. And again, you look at a lot of different mock drafts. Here's a guy that is probably wouldn't be around by 2020 or by the 21st pick, but might be close. I believe the latest mock draft from The Athletic has him going to the Los Angeles Rams at 19. And so, again, maybe a trade would be needed to jump up just a few spots to get J.J. McCarthy if that is of interest. But then there are some questions with what skill set J.J. McCarthy will have at the next level and how will that correlate. He wasn't really asked to do a lot in that Michigan offense. They were so good on the ground. I think back to that game against Penn State. They didn't even have to throw the ball in the fourth quarter. But at the same time, the kid's a national champion. He led the offense. He led the University of Michigan to a national championship and certainly possesses the athleticism that's necessary to have success at the NFL level. Just watch that Rose Bowl tape where he has a one-handed catch on a throwback play and then somehow has the presence of mind to throw the ball downfield. He is a superb athlete. So maybe the draft and stash idea with J.J. McCarthy, where you have 2 under contract for 1 more year, draft J.J. McCarthy, let him learn the system for a year, and then maybe he's your quarterback moving forward. Now, the third member of, I would say, realistic quarterbacks for the Dolphins to have their eye on, if they want to do the draft and stash, with Tua having just 1 more year on his current deal, the 5th year of the rookie deal that the club optioned, Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. And in my humble opinion, I think Michael Penix Jr. should have won the Heisman Trophy. We all know that went to Jaden Daniels, but point being, Michael Penix Jr. had a fantastic season for the Washington Huskies, eventual runners-up in college football this year, Pac-12 champions. The stats right there for you. 36 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, nearly 5,000 yards passing. But injury concerns are a part of the equation with Michael Penix. Remember, he was at Indiana before he transferred to Washington. He's had several torn ACLs. And with Michael Penix Jr., it's very, very intriguing when you look at the sample size of his last 2 games. First, the college football playoff semifinal against Texas. I felt like he was shooting up draft boards after that game because he was dropping balls in the bucket. He was all over as far as the arm strength and the ability to move the ball downfield. He looked really, really good. He looked mobile. He looked athletic. He was putting the ball in tight windows, throwing it on the dime. But then in that national championship game against Michigan, he was exposed a little bit. He did not play well. He was under duress. He was under pressure. And the Washington offense just could not move the ball against Michigan. So if you want to do recency bias, you've got his second to last game, one of his best games of his career. His last game, not so good. The injury concern also a part of the conversation. And he's all over the map as far as mock drafts. Some have him going in the first round, some in the second round. Either way, I think Michael Penix Jr., a guy to keep your eye on if the Dolphins do elect to go with a quarterback in a draft and stash type of situation. Now, I want to hear from you. I gave you 3 options. You got to pick one if the Dolphins were to draft a quarterback in the first round. Who would you like to see them go with? If it's Bo Nix, type BN. If it's J.J. McCarthy, type JJ. And for Michael Penix Jr., type MPJ. Either way, let me know in the comments. I'm very curious to hear from you. I've got one thing to say on the matter. Tua's our guy. And I can't make it any more clear how I feel that the notion of going away from Tua is crazy to me because quarterback play in the National Football League is hard to come by. Not everybody is Tom Brady or Joe Montana, or I guess in today's climate, the most elite quarterbacks. There's such thing as being in between. And I don't think Tua necessarily represents a tweener guy, but I think he's better than what a lot of people want to give him credit for. And he certainly possesses the skill set to lead an offense. Do I think he has some areas to improve? Absolutely. Got to figure out a way to beat good teams. Got to figure out a way to win on the road and in the cold. But the notion of maybe securing home field advantage next year and making a playoff run through the playoffs with home field advantage, not that crazy. I'm all in on Tua. And there's not really anything, I don't anticipate seeing anything that will change my mind. But you let me know. Is Tua our franchise quarterback? It's real simple. Type Y for yes or N for no. Let me know in the comments because I say yes. Tua is our franchise quarterback, and the notion of replacing Tua, I think, is something the Dolphins would regret. Make sure you subscribe to Dolphins Today because we're going to be bringing you content each and every day in this offseason leading up to the draft, all through free agency. When breaking news happens, maybe Tua has a contract extension tomorrow. We'll be here to tell you about it. That's why you subscribe to Dolphins Today.